Hey, what's up guys? I just want to read this quote to you. This is from Chosen Chibana. If you guys don't know, he was one of the big figureheads for Kobayashi Shorin Ryu. Here it is. In the old days, we trained karate as a martial art, but now they train karate as a gymnastic sport. I think we must avoid treating karate as a sport. It must be a martial art at all times! Exclamation mark. Your fingers and the tips of your toes must be like arrows. Your arms must be like iron. You have to think that if you kick, you try to kick the enemy dead. If you punch, you must thrust to kill. If you strike, then you strike to kill the enemy. This is the spirit you need in order to progress in your training. He was born in 1885, died in 1969. So this is pre-commercialization of karate in America. This is old school karate from one of the last people of this modern era of Okinawan masters, right? Think about that. I saw an Instagram post the other day about like how people were always complaining about how the youth don't want to work anymore. So 2024, people don't want to work anymore. 1990, people don't want to work anymore. And it goes all the way back, 1950s, there's an article of someone saying, hey, people don't want to work anymore. Down to 1920s, people don't want to work anymore. And I felt like reading this Chibana clip, I'm like, karate is so watered down now in today's world, and Chibana felt that exact same way in the early 1900s. For me, it kind of sparked this fire. I was like, I want to be the Chibana of this modern generation. I want to tell you guys, karate has been so watered down, but the silver lining is we can change that, especially with social media, especially with all these resources that we have to keep karate legitimate. And I know I'm talking to a lot of old heads here too, that karate used to be legitimate back in the day, and it's just lost a lot of its fire. And one thing in that quote that he mentioned, like every time you punch, every time you kick, it should be a strike to kill. And one easy way that my sensei told me, every movement in kata should be certain death. Just like Kyokushin guys, Ichigaki Hisatsu. One punch, certain death. So that means when you do your kata, and we're gonna go into the drills now. When you do your kata, one drill that helps me a lot is like doing my katas in a straight line. And that allows me to feel where all the impact points should be. And I'll choose one kata for you that's pretty straightforward. It's pretty popular, Pinan Shodan. The first movement of Pinan Shodan, it goes from here, and then it goes up here, whatever variation you want. People would say middle block, high block, push them out at the same time. These are misnomers. As you guys know, I talk about this all the time. I personally teach it as like an outward movement of the bottom arm, forward movement towards the direction of the attacker of the top arm. Top arm is framing above your head. Bottom arm is around like midsection, right? And being able to describe it that way, it doesn't confine the movement into a box. As you guys know, if you just say middle block, you'll just see everything as a middle block, right? But if I think outward movement of my left arm, all right, how can I train that so that when I do that movement, I'm thinking that it's gonna end the fight? And that's the mentality, right? A lot of people, when they do kata, they think, hey, this is like, here's my fluff, and boom, here's my fight ender, right? And then here's a fluff again. So you're like thinking about these dynamic, like you're adding dynamicism to your kata subconsciously, because you think the obvious things are the ones that are fight enders. The obvious kick, the obvious punch. But I was always taught every single movement should end a fight. So that led me to drill to a way that I can maximize the efficiency, the effectiveness of every movement, even if it didn't feel like an obvious punch, right? So going back to this Pinan Shodan thing, I have a couple tools that I use. And so the first one is an outward movement of the left fist, right? So if I'm facing forward and I'm not able to like have a target in front of me, obviously, or it makes sense for me to kind of move on to the side and rotate 90 degrees to it, so I can really work on this leftward movement of my left fist and really work on the impact of it, right? So I can just work on this motion here. So I'm splitting up the first movement in Pinan Shodan into individual movements. So I'm just gonna go here and just work on this. And I feel like my body moving in sync with my hand, my hips, and my stance is moving to help maximize this. If you feel like you're going to a cat stance and you're just doing like an arm motion, it doesn't feel great. Try to add more of your body into it. I always tell my students, try to maximize your impact, maximize the power generation, and then hone it in over time and make it a little more targeted, right? So even if you have to do this and have some visuals, for an outside middle block, I always tell people like you're throwing a ninja star, you're throwing a frisbee, right? There's that flick there, right? So if you're doing that, you're like working on that flick. That feels good to me, right? And then you add in the next motion. So as this goes out, this shoots forward. For me, it's easiest to think when I have techniques that shoot forward, I have an impact tool like a bag or a punching bag or whatever, makiwara, to really drill that motion of shooting forward because I can push into this tool. When it's to the side, what you just saw, I rotated it so I can use the impact tool. Another thing I do when things are to the side is I use like a resistance band, right? So if I grab this band here, and let's just say it's set up and I'm going to the side with the resistance band helps me feel that resistance so my body can move against that. And one thing I used to do a lot for my students is grab onto their gi in the opposite direction of where their limb is going. So if we're trying to drill this middle block outward, I would grab onto their gi on the opposite direction and make them throw their middle block to the point where it rips me out of my grip. Of course, I'm not gripping it 100%, but it's giving them some physical resistance so they feel where their body needs to go. So imagine someone's here grabbing this gi and they're feeling that motion of trying to rip out of that grip. That really helps get their body in sync. It helps that upper body and lower body to get in sync, using your feet and your stances and the ability to expand and contract to get the most out of your impact. So forward stuff is pretty straightforward. I'm pun intended. So I'm literally just thinking I'm gonna use this like a forward punch, but it's above my head. So if I need to drop down, right? And then you add in the stances and everything. So the Pinan Shodan beginning is a cat stance or a shift backward of my body weight with my posture still up, right? So that tells me if I'm just doing something like that, I can add them two together and I can really work on trying to turn this into a finisher. And a lot of people don't think, hey, beginning of Pinan Shodan is just like you're blocking something from the side and you're blocking something else, and then now you're gonna throw your finisher. But again, every single move should be certain depth. And if you approach kata in that mentality, when you do a kata from beginning to end, even a basic kata that's like only a few moves long, it should feel like you are out of breath. You should feel like your whole body is just clenching up and relaxing, because you're bracing for a violent encounter. Right? A lot of old school guys, they teach this and they understand this. Kata should be for a fight. But the kicker here is that should not be an excuse to not be able to spar properly. A lot of people think karate is too deadly, so I can't use it in a sparring situation. I'm here to say if you can't use it against a little resistance or in a live setting, most likely you're not going to be able to use it in a real situation. And I say that because, yes, kata by itself will give you the coordination, kata on a bag will give you the impact, but kata against a live person will give you the timing, the distance, the reactions off of them that won't be as pretty as the kata that you do, right? So just keep that in mind. So again, just as a recap, kata needs to be deadly. Every technique in a kata has potential to be deadly. That means don't rush through a technique. A lot of people, when I was coming up, they'll rush to this move, right? right? They'll do like the sloppy ones that they shortchange their blocks, they shortchange some techniques so they get to the big impact one. What if everyone is a potential to kill, right? Kill, break the arm, break the ribs, and you do it on the other side. Kill, break the arm, break the ribs, right? Break here as you turn. If you do your katas like that, you'll see a transformation in yourself. You'll be able to visualize the opponent a lot easier too, because your facial expression changes, your breathing changes. Because look, I'm out of breath with those 6 movements, but it's because in my head, I just killed 6 guys, right? I know it's an extreme version of that. I'm gonna be mean by being the guy that just sees red, but I'm saying approach kata in that mentality and you'll respect it a lot more. Rather than just doing kata for the test, and then now I'm gonna put on gear, I'm gonna point spar. What if your kata can be used in real sparring? And these are little steps and little drills that you can do to get there. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a short video. I'm glad to start making more videos here. If you like this stuff, go to karateBreakdown.com, check out my content there. Peace.